Hello everyone, welcome to my seminar. This seminar is called Working with Stakeholders. I'm Nicola Dickens and I'm from Make It Happen Consultancy. So just to give you a bit of a background about Make It Happen Consultancy, we're based in Stockport in Manchester and operate out of Bootle, the Sustainable Centre in Bootle. We cover income generation and social value, so we are income generation and social value specialists, and so far to date we've set up 61 social enterprises and brought in around £45 million of income for them. We are qualified and experienced in social enterprise. Just to show you our model, our sustainability model believes that we don't believe in particularly in legal structures. We believe that any organisation can attain social value, and so we concentrate on the following areas: profit, ethics, people and social impact. So in terms of stakeholder engagement and working with stakeholders, just to share a definition of a stakeholder with you, and that is: a stakeholder is any individual or group who can affect or is affected by the actions, decisions, policies and practices or goals of the organisation. So that links in hugely to stakeholder theory, and just to sort of widen that definition, this says the stakeholder theory is a theory of organisational management and business ethics that addresses morals and values in managing an organisation. So it identifies and models the groups which are the stakeholders of a corporation, and both describes and recommends methods by which management can give due regard to the interests of those groups. In short, it attempts to address the principle of who or what really counts. So who and what really counts in your organisation? Well, first of all, we need to look at who the stakeholders might be in your organisation. And so we can split this into three areas. So first of all, we can look at direct stakeholders. Now, direct stakeholders are the stakeholders that you have direct contact with. These may be your staff, it may be your service users, it may be your volunteers, but those are the ones that directly have contact with you. The second circle here is the indirect stakeholders. And so indirect stakeholders are people that don't have a direct contact with you, but will have a contact with your direct stakeholders. So for example, your direct stakeholder may be staff. The indirect stakeholders with staff will be their families, or it might be their friends. And then we look at the wider stakeholder group, and the wider stakeholder group are those that may not have contact with you but would still have an effect of what you do. So say for example you were delivering health and social care services, then the Department of Health would be a wider stakeholder because they will have an impact on what you do. So what I've done is I've put out a template here for you, which when you get a copy of the notes you'll be able to print out, and it enables you to map your direct, indirect and wider stakeholders. So if you just write them in here, so your direct, you may have several groups here, same with your indirect and your wider. Now the problem is when you come to that, when you're certainly looking at wider stakeholders, it seems to be the whole world, and you look and you think, oh my gosh, how are we going to engage with the whole world? And so what we need to do is we need to prioritise our stakeholders. And how we can do that is split them into three different levels. So the first level of stakeholders will be those that have power and influence. Now this can run across the direct, indirect and wider stakeholders. These stakeholders are the ones that have the power to stop your organisation from working basically. So in some cases it might be, if you're a charity, it might be the trustees who could stop things working. It might be your funder who could stop things. It might be your volunteers or your staff who could stop things. Well, basically that category is for those who have a power and influence to stop what the organisation's doing. The second category here is stakeholders with urgency, and I'm sure we all know those. So they're the stakeholders who want to have it now. So the ones that kick up a lot of fuss because they want things now, and if they don't get them now, then they're going to make a bit of a noise. The third layer here is legitimate stakeholders. So these are stakeholders that will support you anyway, no matter what you do. So as you can see here, in terms of priority of engagement, you know, we have 3 different levels. We can map the stakeholders, and I'll just show you another sheet that I've done for you that you can copy or fill out. And how we start to map the stakeholders here is that we start to put the direct stakeholders from your circles diagram, and find out which type of stakeholders they are. So are they stakeholders with power, urgency or legitimacy? And what you tend to get then is this table. And so what we can see, and what this does here, is that the stakeholders that are direct stakeholders here and with power, so they're the stakeholders that have an immediate effect and also have the power to stop the organisation. They're your priority 1. So we can see that in here. So they're the ones that you want to be engaging with first, because they're the ones that are going to make it difficult for you if you don't engage with them. The second layer that we see here is the indirect stakeholders and those with power. And these ones here are the ones that don't have direct access to you but still have power. So that might be a funder here, and so they're the second level. Same here with the direct stakeholders with urgency. And what we start to do is build up a matrix here of different layers of engagement, and I'll show you what we do with those in a second. So going back to the table, this is what you can use to be able to split those up. So we end up with number 1 here, number 2 here, and number 2 here, etc. So once we've identified the priority of stakeholders, how do we engage with them? So, as I said to you, we engage with the stakeholders in priority order. The next way to look at this is to look at where we will be able to engage with each segment of stakeholders, and decide how we'll be able to engage with them, and decide why we want to engage with them. So again, we have a sheet here that enables you to do this. So, for example, on the previous matrix where we have the type 1 stakeholders, so the direct and power stakeholders, you may have different ones in there. So you may have staff, you may have service users, etc. So you can break these down. So here we would put staff, here we would put service users. You know, you might go down to the next layer, which is layer 2, and you might have funders here, etc. And what we do is we look at that area. So in the segment here, we say, okay, we have staff in there. Well, for this one, it's obvious where you will find them. Then you write down here how you can engage with them, and then you write here why do you want to engage with them, and you build up a table of an engagement, basic engagement strategy for engaging with your stakeholders. So going back to prioritising your stakeholders, when we break them down into segments by importance, we now need to decide which is the most appropriate way to engage with them. So, as we saw, priority 1 and 2 stakeholders are the most important, and so we need to ensure that our engagement methods enable us to get the best quality information. To do this, we recommend carrying out a one-to-one structured interview, as we want to involve them. By all means, it's not the only way that you can do it. You can do other ways of engaging with priority 1 and 2 stakeholders, but really, to be honest, with the importance they have, the best way is to sit down with them and carry out an interview, be it formal or informal. The big thing here is that you have those questions with you for a one-to-one structured interview, so that you know what you want to ask them. This is known as involving people. Priority 3 stakeholders are also very important, but the information that we receive from them is not essential as priority 1 and 2. Therefore, we recommend engaging with these stakeholders through a focus group, as we want to engage with them. So the second level that we see in here is a focus group, using the same questions that you have in the one-to-one structured interview, and getting people together to have a discussion and engaging with them. So for priority 5 or 6, that's the bottom line of the matrix. We're interested in the stakeholders' opinions, so we can use surveys or questionnaires to consult with them. So again, the wider stakeholder group that you will probably see in this level, we're wanting to engage with them, how they feel. We will use the same questions that we use in all the other methods, but this may be done through an online survey or through a questionnaire. So just to go through the different levels of engagement. So as you can see in this table, we have the different priority levels here. And so we see there the interaction, and this is where we see the 3 levels of stakeholder engagement. So we have the involve level, we have the engage level, and we have the consult level. So priority 1 and 2, as we said before, one-to-one structured interviews, and this can be done face-to-face or by telephone. Then we see priority 3 here, and that's engaging with people through focus groups, face-to-face or through electronic means. So you can do this through such things as GoToMeeting or through Skype conferencing, video conferencing, etc. Priority 4 and 5 is to consult with stakeholders. So again, this is a survey or a questionnaire. Another good thing that we have now around modern technologies, we can actually set that up online through SurveyMonkey, or we can, if you prefer, do the traditional way of asking people to fill out questionnaires by post and return them to you. So, what about asking the right questions? Oops, sorry about that. The box came up and said something a bit strange. Just bear with me a second. Sorry about that, my screen froze there. Okay, so now so far we've looked at stakeholders. We've looked at how we separate stakeholders and prioritise stakeholders into different areas of stakeholders and put them into priorities such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've had a look at the type of engagement methods that we can have with our stakeholders. So the next bit is around the questions that you would like to ask. I suppose these are probably the most important part of engaging with stakeholders. So stakeholder dialogue is the most important part of working with stakeholders. The way in which you encourage dialogue, the questions that you ask, and the way in which you ask them are essential to the results of your stakeholder engagement exercise. So only ask what you need to, let the stakeholder know why and what you are doing, ensure that the stakeholder is comfortable in engaging with you, and say thank you and share your results. Just to go a bit more into research, and looking formally. Oh, hang on one second, the screen's frozen again. Okay, looking at ethics of research, I think as all of us as researchers, particularly in terms of stakeholder engagement, have a responsibility to ensure that we don't upset people by carrying out our research. And so here's some good guidelines around ensuring that your research is ethical. So the principal aim of research ethics is, as far as possible, to protect all groups involved in research: participants, organisations, funders and researchers throughout the lifetime of the research and into the dissemination process. This seems a bit strange in terms of stakeholder engagement, because you think, actually, is it research? But actually it is, and you know, it's engaging with people. So there are 6 key principles of ethical research to be addressed. So the first principle we see here is that research should be designed, reviewed and undertaken to ensure integrity, quality and transparency. Now, one way to do this is to test out your questions. So if you write your list of questions and then maybe ask friends or ask staff colleagues to have a look at them and see what they think. That then enables you to review the questions that you ask are suitable. Number 2, research staff and participants must normally be informed fully about the purpose, methods and intended possible uses of the research, what their participation in the research entails and what risks, if any, are involved. So basically what this is saying here, and it's in basic terms, is when you're asking people to take part in your stakeholder engagement exercise, make sure that you ask them if it's okay they take part. A formal way of doing this is to develop a consent form, which is just a form which tells the individual what the research you're doing, what stakeholder research you're doing, why you want to speak with them, and how you will use the information that they give you, and ask them to sign to make sure that any risks are covered. Number 3, the confidentiality of information supplied by research participants and the anonymity of respondents must be respected. Okay, so that's enabling people to say things confidentially. I think this always has a bonus when you're carrying out one-to-one research, because I think people were more likely to talk to you if you say that their information will be held confidentially. What I tend to ask is, I ask them straight out, would you like this to be confidential, or would you like your name to be mentioned? And they will respond appropriately. So that clears it up right at the start. Just to let you know that I do have a consent form that I can send to anybody if they want a copy of this, that may help you, and it sort of preempts all these questions. So if you do want that, please ask unlimited, and they will come through to me and ask me. So going back to the best practice in terms of research ethics. Number 4, research participants must take part voluntarily, free from any coercion. That basically means you can't bully anybody into taking part. Again, I wouldn't think that anybody would anyway, but one of the areas is that everybody has to agree to take part. Number 5, harm to research participants and researchers must be avoided in all instances. So make sure everyone's safe. That's again to do with the place that you might carry out the research. If you're carrying out a focus group, make sure that the area is covered in terms of health and safety, make sure that it's accessible, make sure that everyone can have their say. Number 6, the independence of research must be clear and any conflicts of interest or partiality must be explicit. One of the areas around this number 6, best practice number 6, I think what we've developed within this country is a consultation overload. So we can tend to consult with people and over-consult with people. So people can be a bit dubious about being consulted with. So if we're clear and we say exactly how we're going to use this piece of research, why we're talking to the people and what can come out of that, then we make sure that we are not over-consulting with people. And the most important part around this is that we actually get back to them and we tell them how we can use their research and the results of the research. And that sort of makes people think, well, actually, yeah, my opinion or my views were valued. So how do we ensure that these principles are adhered to? Are the questions going to offend anyone? So the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, who are the people that we're talking to? So, for example, if they're service users, we need to make sure that we're not asking them any confidential questions, nothing that will offend them. It's the same for everybody else as well. So you need to, this is good where you test your questions with other people. So you might actually ask a service user to have a look over the questions and see if there's anything in there that would cause a problem. So the second thing here is, are the questions easy to understand? I think that's one thing that we tend to do when we're developing questionnaires, that we don't make the questions easy to understand. They may be understandable to us, but when we go out and we ask people the questions, they look at us puzzled and say, what do you mean? So again, this is another reason for testing your questions with people you already know. I mean, one thing that may be good is to send them a copy of the questions and ask all these questions. You know, are the questions going to offend anyone? Are the questions easy to understand? So, do the questions reflect people's backgrounds, literacy, situation and experiences? Again, they have to be appropriate, the questions. They have to reflect what people know. Ensure that they can read them well. The literacy is clear and concise. That it fits the situation that they're involved in and the experiences that they've experienced. You know, don't make it difficult for them. Are the questions structured so that you can receive the responses that you require? So this is another thing as well, is how we actually construct those questions to ensure that people engage and also to ensure that they respond to you. And so how we can do that is to look at different ways of asking questions, and this will directly result in the way the data is provided to you. So this will inform the way that you store the data and report the data. So if you want to ask open questions, and open questions are questions that will ask something like, how do you value the services that you receive at this organisation? So what if you ask somebody that, they're going to give you quite a lot of information. This will produce lots of qualitative data, so lots of narrative. And if that's what you want, then that's great to use that question. So if you wanted to build a paragraph of the value of the services or develop a case study, then that would be the open question for you. However, we have to look at how we will record that. And maybe if we're looking at recording lots of data, So maybe we should be looking at closed questions that will produce quantitative data. So here, this question would be, do you value the services that you have received at this organisation? So obviously we're going to get a yes or a no answer there. That will enable us to hold that information on a spreadsheet, for example, where we might interview around 40, 50 people, and we can record a yes or a no for each answer to that question. If it was an open question, then we'd really struggle to benchmark different stakeholders, different responses, because there would be so much information in the open question, the answer to the open question, that we wouldn't be able to record it on a spreadsheet. So we can see there two immediate differentials between the way you can ask questions. The third question, so if you wanted to open that a bit more and you wanted to look at different levels of people valuing, then you might use a rated question, which would be, how would you rate the services you have received at this organisation? And then you would look at 1 being good value and 5 being poor value. That sort of opens, especially in terms of reporting statistics, the levels at which people respond. So straight away, if you were putting these results on a spreadsheet, you would look at numbers 1 to 5, and then you could do an average across all the stakeholder responses. So again, the way that you ask questions is really important. So just recapping on the types of questions, going back to only ask what you need to. Let the stakeholder know, let the stakeholder know why and what you are doing. Ensure that the stakeholder is comfortable in engaging with you. Say thank you and share your results. So going back to the main key things you need to remember. In terms of developing questions, are the questions going to offend anyone? Are the questions easy to understand? Do the questions reflect people's backgrounds? Are the questions structured? So asking the right questions. And then back to how you ask those questions, through open questions, closed questions, or rated questions. So collating your responses. There are many ways of collating and managing your responses. It depends on the amount and type of data that you have, your existing data capture methods and compliance with the Data Protection Act. So for small amounts of data, the best methods are using a spreadsheet, so Excel. So as we said before, if you're using questions that enable you to report statistical information, then Excel is brilliant for doing that, so putting them on a spreadsheet. In a Word file, you may prefer to report by way of stories. These can be case studies or just testimonials, little snippets that you find how people respond. I'm using those. You can also use a database. So the one here is Access, probably the ones that you do have access to, pardon the pun. You can use Access, and then you're able to convert it into Excel. So they're the best ways to manage your data. For large amounts of data, there are more complex systems that you may want to use. However, these can be expensive to buy or to access. So here we have SPSS, and SPSS is an extension to Excel. That enables you to hold statistical information, but also to be able to measure different information against different information. So you can query things. So you might have how many people responded this and responded that, so you can get a really good picture of the statistics. This one here, en vivo, this is more for qualitative information. So this enables you to hold transcripts of structured interviews, case studies, anything that's a written representation. So you can even put videos in it and use that as evidence. It then enables you to look at common themes throughout all your evidence. So you need to set up what's known as nodes, which will be able to pick up common themes throughout all your research. This one here as well, views, is quite a useful application, and I'd just like to show you that. If I've got time, let me have a look. Oh yes, we've got a bit of time. I'll just go over to that and show you that quickly, if I can. I'm not sure whether it will. Oh yes. Okay, so this is Views. Views was developed by a cooperative, and it's an online project management and impact reporting platform. It costs around £400 a year to have a license for, and it works really, really well. It enables you to log all your contacts, so all your stakeholders can be logged here, and record data about the people you work with. It enables you to match it with each piece of work that you may do. So that might be projects that you deliver, it might be activities, it might be products you sell. So you can put these in here, so you can match the contacts to the work they do. This is the document, so you can actually hold a copy of all the documents that you might use here, so your questionnaires, your questions for your focus groups, etc. And you can match those again to the different types of contacts, and then it filters statistics for you here and prints out reports for you. So that is a really, really nice tool to use when carrying out this type of exercise. So let's go back to the slideshow. Okay. So what I wanted to show you here is an action plan that will help you plan out your stakeholder engagement. So this enables you to look at the stakeholder group. So for example here, as you can see, this is a priority type 1, going back to the matrix that we looked at. So the type 1 here is volunteers. So the segment of stakeholders is volunteers. And the way we would like to engage with the volunteers would be through a survey. The outcome would be to assess their satisfaction in volunteering, and then we could put when, and we could put May 2012. So what this enables you to do is an action plan, and it follows on from the other exercise sheets that I've shown you. It enables you to plan out your stakeholder engagement. So you may have in here, you may want to break these down, so you would have type 1 here, and you would break that down into all your type 1 stakeholders, and then you may have your type 2 here. But it enables you to manage your stakeholder engagement over maybe a year period. So you could have a whole year's calendar of stakeholder engagement rather than trying to do it in one lump, trying to do it over maybe a week or over a month. You can actually plan this out for the whole year. So it's really useful to keep that going, because really if we're engaging with stakeholders, we should be doing that on a regular basis. And this enables you to collect that information on a regular basis. So again, so just going through all the exercise sheets that I've given you, to go back through them, so starting right from the beginning here. in terms of working through this, we have the map your stakeholders. So we've got the circles with the stakeholders, so you can map your stakeholders into direct, indirect and wider stakeholders. Once you've done that, you can prioritise your stakeholders, so you can split them into the stakeholders with power, urgency and legitimacy, and those that are direct, indirect and wider stakeholders. Then you can actually look at how you can engage with your stakeholders, so looking at where you will find them, how you can engage with them and why you want to engage with them. This gives you the pre-work to designing your questions. And then finally, your plan that you can draw up to engage with volunteers, with stakeholders. So that's me done. Finished a bit earlier, but if you have any questions, please ask and hopefully I can answer them. Back over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Nikki. That was brilliant. Already got a couple of questions, but if anybody wants to type in any questions right now, we've got time to answer those. But I'm just going to start with the ones that have already been asked. So the first one is, how will I know the best way to communicate with my stakeholders?
Okay, well, people ask this is quite often, ask them. I think it's really simple response to that. You don't know how to communicate with your stakeholders until you've asked them. So I think maybe the first exercise, even pre-communicating with your stakeholders, is actually to contact them and ask them, how would you like to be engaged with? I think we assume too often how people would like to be engaged with, but if we ask them, then that also helps with then carrying out your stakeholder engagement. Because you've already valued them by asking them how they want to be engaged with.
Thank you. The next question, would it be possible to create an external stakeholder group to help develop my organisation?
Certainly. It's from the work I've done with volunteers, it's a really good exercise for volunteers. People absolutely love doing stakeholder engagement. And the other area you might want to look at as well is engaging with a university or a college that will have students that are undertaking research, and they can use it as part of their studies. So it might be worthwhile developing a group through students, but yeah, definitely setting up maybe a working group to look at stakeholder engagement, and then that can be looked at as a continual thing rather than a one-off exercise.
Great, thank you. Regarding the tables that you gave as examples in your presentation, would you be able to have any example copies of completed tables? And also copies of the structured interviewed questions, because it's come up a couple of times. I think people might benefit from those if we could maybe email them out further to this presentation.
What I can do is I've actually got some example sort of questionnaires and the interview consent forms and example the tables, so I can put that into a document and send it over, and then you can share it with everybody.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, if you send it to me, I've got everybody's email addresses that are on today, so I can certainly send that out. So that would be fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
Great. Questions are flying in now. So another one here. Sometimes funders and local authorities are very difficult to get on board despite asking them. What advice could you give to engage them as stakeholders?
Okay, it's the way in which you engage with them, I suppose. So, for example, funders, do you know, the biggest thing is to go to people and ask what they value. It's usually a really good opening question. So, for example, with a funder, you might want to maybe pop an email to them and say, you know, we're looking at how we're doing against your funding, and we'd really like to look at engaging with our stakeholders. Could you tell us what you need to know and what you will value in the information we can get? And they're more likely to engage with you on those principles. I think what we tend to do is tend to go and look at engaging with stakeholders and asking questions that aren't valuable to the funders or to potential commissioners. So it's about working with them and asking them what they would value and what they would like to know from your stakeholders.
Great, thank you. Is there funding available for any kind of stakeholder engagement, do you know of?
Yes, most certainly. We've been quite successful working with our clients in obtaining awards for all to do this type of exercise. Awards for all is really good because they love the fact that you're engaging with stakeholders and getting more people to know about your organisation and involving more people. So actually, I mean, that's probably, awards for all is probably the easiest one, but there are also quite a lot of charitable trusts out there that would support stakeholder engagement. So yeah, it's quite a fundable activity.
Great, thank you. Somebody is asking about the key messages an organisation would like to get out to stakeholders. Where would you usually see that fit in the process of stakeholder analysis?
Okay, we do something. We have a program called Value Intelligence that works with stakeholder analysis way of working, and the way we do this is when we're doing the stakeholder engagement, we ask our stakeholders what they value about the organisation. We then correlate all the answers and we come up with themes, and that develops what we call key value indicators. These key value indicators then form a pledge, benchmarks in which you can measure against over a year and report back on.
Great, thank you. I'm just looking at the rest of the questions here. How do I engage with commissioners?
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting one. Something that again a lot of our clients say, and do you know, I think it's a difficult world out there at the moment for commissioners. In all fairness, I think, you know, they sometimes don't know what they want either, because the system is such a mess at the moment. I think that's the approach that you give with commissioners. I think, you know, it's recognising that you may be of help to these commissioners in doing their job. So again, it's about going to your commissioner and saying to them, okay, how can I help you? How can we add value to you know what you do? We do a lot of work with commissioners, so anybody who does want some advice on working with commissioners, if you please feel free to contact me and I can have that discussion with you.
Great, thank you. Another question that's just come in. How much time, resources and money is it worth investing in this? You mentioned views before, which is quite expensive for a small social enterprise. Yes. So just wondered what your thoughts on that were, really.
Okay, what I would do for a small social enterprise, I would certainly look at recruiting volunteers to carry out these exercises with you. They needn't actually cost anything if you, apart from the volunteer expenses obviously, if volunteers or indeed students were to carry out this exercise for you. You know, you can use, you can report back on the statistics manually, just putting them in a report. So again, that's quite cost effective. I'd certainly look for volunteers that would be able to develop stakeholder engagement for you.
Cool, excellent. Now, I was wondering, coming to the end of the questions now, unless anybody typed anything in at the last minute, if you could share 5 top tips with us on stakeholder engagement, and I'm putting you on the spot there. 5 top tips I think would be a good ending.
Okay, top tip 1 is planning. Is that plan, use the sheets that I've given you to plan who you're going to talk to and what you're going to say to them. The second one is to don't do it all at once, because it's a huge exercise. Spread it out over the year. Number 3 would to be to treat your stakeholders as human beings. So ask them, ask them how they like to be consulted. Ask them what they value. Make sure you involve them. Don't just consult with them. Okay, that's probably 3. Number 4, you may have to resort to rewarding people sometimes. Like if you do a survey, some people, in order to get people to answer it, you might sort of do a competition for somebody to win something, which will encourage them to respond. The 5th one is on experience of us carrying out this process on behalf of our clients. It's actually a really good market research exercise, and what we've found is that just by engaging with stakeholders and engaging them in the right way, in particular commissioners and funders, they're really, really impressed by it, and it's worth investing in because it opens doors for you. So there's my top 5.